this is Andrea Walford, founder of Sunny Stampin' Incorporated and the Paper Crafters Library. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this fun and easy birthday card. As you can see here when you look at it, the focal point of this card was created using these little flags. And the flags I put together using Stampin' Up's new Petite Pennant Builder Punch. And this is a punch that was just released in their 2011-12 Idea Book and Catalog. Now this card that I've put it on, this card is a 4x8 card. So a little bit of an atypical size, and I usually create my own envelopes for this. For the greeting, what I've done is I've put together, I guess you could call it digital stamps. It's on a PDF printout, and it features a whole bunch of different greetings. And I've made this available to you as a download, so all you have to do to get it is to visit my blog at andreawalford.com, and you'll see the download there. There's a link actually in the description area of this video. Even though I've put together these greetings, if you don't want any of these greetings or they're not suitable to what you're doing, then you can just punch out the letters, and I'll show you how later in the video, and then assemble your own words or phrases. So the first thing I did is to just cut one strip off of my greeting sheet, and I'm going to use the Happy. So this here is the 1/2-inch circle punch. With my punch held so that the window's facing upwards, I'm just going to place it around each letter, and then I'm going to punch it out. Now these greetings that I provided for you, this is an example of the kinds of exclusive downloads and templates that the members of my Paper Crafters Library get, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Paper Crafters Library a little bit further on in the video. Now one of the things that you will notice when you're punching out your letters, especially when you have the window facing upwards, is that you do end up with a little bit of a roughed up edge. You can see here the white around the perimeter of this letter H, and that simply comes from the inside of the punch. Now in order to keep this from showing and to give it a much more clean look, I'm holding it in my tweezers, and then I'm taking my black ink pad and I'm just very carefully running it along the edge of the letters. And that'll hide any of these white marks. Now you do want to make sure that you give this a little bit of time to dry. I'm holding it with a tweezer so that I don't end up with this black all over my fingers. Once I've gotten rid of all the white spots around each letter, I'm then going to set all of these aside to dry and start working on the flags. So as my letters are drying, I want to go ahead and start prepping my flags. And you can see here I've already got 4 of my flags ready. I'm just going to show you how to do the process using this Pacific Point color. So I have my Petite Pennant Builder Punch, and here I'm using the Pacific Point pattern paper from Stampin' Up's Brights collection. And because I want the pattern with the letters to be at the front of the flag, that's the side that I have facing upwards when I'm punching it. So I'm taking my punch and I'm just making sure that the top window of this side of the punch is aligned with the letters. You want to make sure it's straight, but then you also want to make sure, because this scalloped pennant is longer, that you don't accidentally cut off the bottom of that. So once you're happy with the positioning, you then punch it out. Now using double-sided adhesive, I'm just going to take the pennant with the straight edges and I'm going to center and stick it to the scalloped pennant like that. I'm then going to take some Pacific Point cardstock and this time use my 3/4 inch circle punch to just punch out a circle, and I'm going to use that to mat my letters on. It just gives it a little bit more definition. It seems to pop more from the flag. And then using a Stampin' Dimensional, I'm going to go ahead and stick that onto my pennant. And then finally I'm going to take a 1/16 inch handheld circle punch, and I'm just going to punch a hole in the top corners of the scallops. Now if you don't have the 1/16 inch handheld circle punch, you can also simply use a piercing tool or a large needle. You just want to make sure that this hole is going to be big enough to thread the embroidery thread or linen thread, whatever you're using to hold your pennants. So I'm now ready to start sticking my letters onto this, and the first thing that I want to do, or that I'm going to do, is to arrange my flags in the order in which I want them to be on my card. And then I'm just going to take my letters, which I've given the opportunity to dry, and very carefully pick them up with tweezers, and then I'm going to just place a very tiny dab of my Tombow liquid adhesive in the center of this punched circle and then very carefully lay down my letter. So as you can see, I now have all my letters attached to my pennants. So I'm now ready to stamp my greeting on my patterned paper. And here I have the Daffodil Delight piece of patterned paper from the Bright stack, and I have it with the text facing upwards, and I'm holding it to my grid paper with a little bit of Dotto. Now the greeting that I'm using comes from this Curly Cute stamp set from Stampin' Up, and it's the Happy Birthday, and I actually cut my stamp in half so that I could just have the birthday mounted on the greeting. I'm using my Stamp-A-Majig to help me align this on my patterned paper, and I want to position it so that it's approximately 3/4 of an inch from the right edge, and I want it to be not quite 1/4 inch up from the bottom of my card. And for this, I'm definitely using my Stamp-A-Majig because I am planning on double stamping this, and I'm using my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And the reason I'm double stamping is that I find whenever you stamp on anything other than Whisper White cardstock, the black doesn't end up quite as dark and vibrant as I like it. So I've gone ahead and I've centered and stuck my Daffodil Delight pattern paper to my basic black cardstock. Now this is 3.5 by 7.5, and my black cardstock is not quite 3 3/4 by 7 3/4. It's about a 1/16 of an inch smaller on both sides, and it just gives it a really nice border. I'm using embroidery thread, and this isn't the expensive kind, the one that's nice and shiny. This is just the one that comes from the kids section of the craft store. And I'm going to start threading it through my pennant, and I'm starting with the last letter of my pennant. So I'm feeding it down the hole on the left, and I'm trying not to get my fingers too close to the end because I don't want it to start unraveling, because once it starts unraveling, it gets tricky to feed through the hole. So then you just want to unravel enough of your floss that you can start sliding your flag across. And you want to have a piece, this piece is about 13 inches long. This is about 13 inches of it that I'm using. And I'm just going to go ahead and thread all my pennants on here. So now that I have all my pennants threaded onto my embroidery floss, I'm just going to start arranging them onto my card. Now right now the pennants are arranged in such a way that there's just about not even 1/8 of an inch space in between them. And then I want to make sure that the floss is pulled relatively taut and that it's in a curved shape. And then once I'm happy with where the shape is, you can take the scissors and then just cut the end of the floss like that. And then I'm going to be holding the embroidery floss to the back of this using tape. Now in the meantime, I want to stick the flags down using dimensionals. So I'm just going to pull a dimensional off my sheet and very carefully lift up my pennant and stick the dimensional to the underside of my pennant. And then remove the backing and then set that down. Now I'm not pressing down on the top because I don't want it to stick too firmly, so that I can arrange my pennants if I have to. Because you will probably find that as you're placing the dimensionals on them, they will most likely shift. And you may actually even find it easier to remove the backing from the dimensionals before you stick it onto the flag. So when you peel it off the backing of your cardstock or of the transfer sheet, just peel the other side off and then very carefully lift up your pennant and slip it under there. And then you don't move it quite as much when you've already removed the backing. So once the pennants are arranged to your satisfaction, you would then push down on them to make sure that the Stampin' Dimensional is well stuck to the pattern paper underneath. And then using Scotch tape, you just wrap the end of the embroidery floss around the edge and then place a little Scotch tape to hold it in place. And you do that for both sides. And if there's any chance of any of the ends overhanging, you can just trim them. And then once that's done, you stick this to the center of your card front. And this is made out of Daffodil Delight cardstock. It was an 8x8 piece, which I scored at 4 inches and folded in half to create a 4x8 card. And I'm just sticking it down with double-sided adhesive. If you wanted to add more height to this, you could use Stampin' Dimensionals. And then, as I mentioned in the introductory section of the video, you would have to create your own envelope for this, and I usually like to alter the standard business size envelopes. So now the last thing I want to do to decorate this a little bit is to add a rhinestone border. Now here I have some rhinestones that were left over from a kit that Stampin' Up! Offered a while ago. It was an Easter kit, and I never really used the rhinestones. As you can see though, they're clear, and I didn't really like how the clear looked on the card. So I'm using a Copic marker, and I just picked one that's kind of a turquoisey color. This one's BG07, and I'm using it to color my rhinestones. And to do that, I'm just simply taking the brush tip and rubbing it over the rhinestones. Now, if you don't have a Copic marker for this, you could also use a Sharpie marker, or I think Pro markers are also alcohol-based markers. So basically you want an alcohol-based marker because that will stick to the slick surface of the rhinestones. So I'm going to color one whole strip and then just a little bit of another strip, which I'm going to use on the other end of the birthday. So I'm going to start with the narrower strip. I'm just going to very carefully pry up one end with the tip of my scissors and just cut it, and then very carefully place it to the right of the birthday greeting. And I'm using the lines of text on my pattern paper as a guide to make sure that this is placed in a straight line. And I'm also not pressing down so that if I have to adjust it, I can pull it up without ripping the paper underneath. Now for the longer strip, I'm essentially doing the same thing. I'm pulling it right off the backing, and then I'm aligning it with the same line of text that I have on the other side. And then I'm going to stretch it all the way across the bottom of the card. And then once you have it stretched all the way across and you're confident that it's straight, you can then go ahead and just trim off any of the overhanging rhinestones. And then you can go ahead and just press it down so that it's stuck to the card. And there you can see I've now created my birthday card. And I just want to show you, compared to the card I initially created in the opening video, how with a simple change in the flag color, this one's the Melon Mambo, that's real red, and a simple change in the rhinestone color, you can take a card that's more suitable for a girl and create a card that's more suitable for a boy. Well, if you enjoyed this video tutorial, you enjoy the way I teach, and you'd like to learn even more, I invite you to check out the Paper Crafters Library. It's an absolutely amazing online resource of paper crafting video tutorials. Whether you're new into paper crafting or you've been doing it for years and you just want to get better, you're going to find tons of stuff in there for you. We teach you card making, scrapbooking, 3D items, altered art, even a little bit of mixed media. We're going to show you how to use the products and supplies that you already own. We teach you some great tips and techniques, and we share some fantastic project ideas. So make sure you come on over and check us out.